My name is Spencer Sakurai, and I'm a cinematographer. And this is the end of the f***ing gels.
So clearly I've been watching a lot of the Netflix series End of the F***ing World. Now this series has a really unique look to it, and it really got me inspired to go out and shoot something for you guys here on YouTube. And that's kind of perfect timing because I needed an excuse to test out a couple pieces of gear that I recently got in the mail. So let's talk about the look of End of the F***ing World first. You know, the show is kind of like a dark romantic comedy, I would say. Something they do a lot is that there's usually some accent of red in the scene, so I decided to put on this red shirt. And then there's usually some sort of like woods or earth tones, and so I'm just going to use the cabinets in the background, and we'll just call those our wood tones. And then they use a lot of kind of magenta or kind of tungsten lighting. So even like when they're shooting in daylight, sometimes they'll have like a practical light on the room to kind of give a little tungsten feel. And that's kind of what I wanted to channel. Lately I've just been kind of obsessing over the warm tones of some TV shows. When I first got into cinematography, I was obsessed with daylight. I was obsessed with 5600 Kelvin and HMIs, and I wanted everything to look clean and white. But now I'm really starting to fall in love with the kind of like deeper, richer earth tones with like grain on the image, and so that's what I want to kind of apply here today. So the red shirt's really going to help with that too, because the tungsten lighting is going to reflect off of it and it's going to kind of give a nice warm tone. And that's something they do a lot in End of the World. So the first piece of gear that I got in recently was a new bicolor LED light from D&O Lighting. Now they reached out to me and they were like, hey, do you want to try out this light? And I'm like, man, people keep reaching out to me and asking me if I want to try out lights, and it's like, I mean, I'll try out the light, and if I like it, then maybe I'll incorporate it in a video. Well, it turns out I do like this light quite a bit. And the first thing that I like about it is that it's bicolor. You'll hear me talk in some of my other videos about messing with gels and how I just really don't like to use gels, and why have to use a gel when you can use a bicolor light or an RGB light. So this light that D&O Lighting sent me is a 180 watt bicolor LED light. It's a panel. It has like a little piece of diffusion on it to make sure that you don't have little LED spots like on your subject's face or anything like that. And then it has barn doors and then a mount to go on a light stand. So that's pretty nice. The barn doors are a nice feature. It's something that seems obvious for a light, but a lot of the new lights don't have barn doors because they're more of like the aperture lights are kind of that cob style lighting. So they're just a bunch of LEDs smashed into one little cob that's going to project the light and make it look like one light source, but they don't usually have barn doors on them. So this one is like already a broad source, which is nice. So it's already going to be a little bit softer than a light like that, but you're still going to want to probably diffuse that in the end to make it just even softer. So it's 180 watts, but I'm guessing you only get about half the output depending on which color temperature you're at. Usually on a bicolor light like this, when you go from like 3200 Kelvin, you're going to be at full brightness at 3200 Kelvin, and when you go back to 5600 Kelvin, you're going to be at full brightness again. They have to shift their power output in order to change that color temperature. So you're only getting about half the power of the LEDs when using a light like this. So it says 180 watts on it, but I bet we're only getting around 90 watts of output. Maybe a little more, I'm not totally sure on that. Just to kind of give a comparison on the output, I would say that it's just a little less bright than a 120D. And that makes sense because if we're only getting 90 watts of power out of it, it would be just below the 120 watts of power that you get out of an Aperture 120D. But that's okay. An Aperture 120D is plenty bright for most scenarios. I mean, right now I'm shooting on the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and we're using the Sigma 18 to 35 millimeter f1.8 with a speed booster. So according to the monitor, we're at about an f1.3 right now at 400 ISO. And I have the light cranked right now, but I have it going through two pieces of diffusion, and it's lighting me up just fine. Now this light's not going to compete with like sunlight, but it's going to be able to add light in the room when you need it, when you're not having to compete with the sun so much. So what else is awesome about the D&O LED light is that you can power it just like you would any other light with a wall plug in your apartment or wherever, but it also has a V-mount battery plate on the back of it. So they also sent me a very large V-mount battery to test out. So D&O Lighting also sells their own batteries, and you can get that with this light if you need to, or you can get that battery for other things like your camera or other accessories. This is a beast of a V-mount battery first off, and then second off, it lasts a really long time on this light. I was setting up this shot for probably like 20 or 30 minutes or so, and I left the light on the whole time so I could check the lighting, and then it's been on this whole time, which has probably been like another 30 minutes. It's already been going for an hour just on a battery. I did not even plug it into the wall. Something just to kind of know about this light is that it has a very large heat sink on the back of it, and so it can get pretty warm, especially if you have that battery attached to the back of it. The battery's going to put off heat, and that heat sink's going to be kind of trying to push some heat away from the LED, so it's going to get pretty hot. It's not going to get as hot as like an old metal tungsten light or anything like that, but just something to note when buying this light. But to get to the point, I wanted to try to play around with the kind of warm tones of tungsten light, and so when going to light this setup, I just took the dial on the back of the D&O light and I pushed it all the way to 3200 Kelvin. And then I'm leaving the camera right now at 5600 Kelvin, so we're getting a big color shift when we're using 3200 Kelvin light in a 5600 Kelvin environment on the camera. And that's where we're getting a nice warm light on my face right now. So to make this lighting more pleasant, I wanted to diffuse the light. So the first thing I did was take some window shears and drape it over the light. So my new apartment's pretty small, and so in order to get the light over here, I didn't want to put it on a light stand. So I just propped it up in my bed, used the barn doors to kind of control the light, and then I put those shears over top of it. Now that wasn't quite soft enough. I wanted to soften it up even more to get a nice even wrap on my face. So I took a C-stand and an arm and I put up a 6x6 quarter grid. Now in the past on this channel, I've talked about using a shower curtain in order to get this big light source like this and to get this nice diffused light. But I now have an actual professional quarter grid, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. It's something that's really nice. That kind of fabric material really helps give a nice soft, even lighting on your subject. So the next thing that I wanted to do in lighting this shot is, I wanted to sell that tungsten look even more. So in the back here in my kitchen, I have a fluorescent light under the cabinets above my counter, and that's probably like a 2700 Kelvin or 2400 Kelvin fluorescent light, but it wasn't giving me enough output to really like give a little kick on my face. So I put the Falconize F7 RGB light off in the corner here, and I set that to the tungsten white balance. This is a light I've reviewed in a previous video. It's a really awesome little light. It's got magnets on the back of it, and you can just stick it to things and change the color temperature on it. It has effects. If you want to see that video, just click the link up here in the corner. So another helpful piece of gear that I recently got in that made this easier for me to set up, as a YouTuber, when you're filming yourself, it's really hard just to film yourself. I mean, you're setting up cameras, you have to get back to your spot, and you have to find focus. A lot of people use DSLRs with autofocus in order to make this easier on them. But me, I use the Pocket 4K or the Ursa mostly, and so I don't have autofocus. So I have to focus everything manually, and I have to keep checking the shot when I'm lighting. So normally I have to get into the shot, and then I have to set up the lights, and then I have to hit record or something, and then run back to the monitor and kind of see what the lighting looks like with me in the frame. And it takes forever. So something really useful that I got in the mail recently is a wireless monitoring system. Now this is from a company called Hollyland. It's called the Mars 300. It's an HDMI wireless transmitter. I'm guessing the 300 means 300 feet or meters. And that's just a kind of guideline to let you know it's not going to go super, super far. This is meant to be used in like a small set like this. 300 feet is pretty far, but I bet once you kind of start maxing out that limit, you're going to start to lose connection on this wireless transmitter. And this is really helpful because I have it transmitting to a small HD monitor over here. You can see that it's coming into the receiver here that's powered by a Sony battery. I'm using the Anton Bauer editions. It's a really beefy version of the battery. And that's kind of the thing about this wireless system is you need two batteries. You need one for the receiver and one for the transmitter. And I'm sure there is a DC input that you could get for like a V-mount or something like that if you wanted to do that. But for right now, I just had these batteries already in hand, so it was easy enough for me just to load this up. And then it comes with 4 antennas, 2 for the transmitter and 2 for the receiver. Then it has 1 extra antenna in case you break one of these or lose one of these. And so it was really simple to set up. All you have to do is kick both of them on. Then you just hold the pair button on the transmitter and on the receiver, and you just hold it for a little bit until the light starts flashing at you, and then they just automatically connect to each other. And it was super easy. When like Teradeks and stuff like that first came out, it always took forever to get them to link up and pair. But they've really figured out the software on these things, and it just paired really fast, and it was really easy. Now it uses a full-size HDMI port, which is nice as well, and then it also has an in and an out. So this can actually act as a pass-through for the HDMI for you as well if you want to pass it through to another monitor so you can have multiple people viewing something at the same time. So this is really helpful when you're lighting yourself. So I can literally like pick up the monitor and walk around the room while I'm lighting and see what's going on in the room. I can see how my lights are actually changing the set rather than having to run back and forth to the camera every time and see what I'm doing, or hitting record and then playing back. So this is something that's going to be super helpful for me on this channel going forward. Now, of course, you can use it for many other reasons. You know, if you have a first AC, you need someone to pull focus for you, and you don't want them attached to the camera, well, then you can use a wireless follow focus and then give the monitor to your camera assistant, and they can be pulling focus for you while you're on set. It's also something that's really nice to have if you have a client on set and you don't want them too close to you, or, you know, disturbing the camera movement or whatever. So you can wirelessly transmit the image to the client, and so they can see what's going on while you're filming. So links to both of these pieces of gear will be in the description below, of course. So what do you think about this look? I think I might start doing this setup every time for YouTube going forward. You know, I like to switch it up quite a bit, but this might be a good go-to setup for me. You know, I just moved into a new apartment. Yes, I no longer live in that big, beautiful loft that I lived in before. Let's all take a moment of silence for our loss. But that's okay, this will be a good challenge. I'll learn how to light in a smaller environment like this. This is fine. You know, I do have a courtyard now, and I still have windows here, so it'll still be a good place to make YouTube videos. Don't worry. There's nothing to worry about. I'm not worried. Don't worry about it. I'm not worried. So going back to the look of End of the Fucking World, I needed to push the colors around in post, you know, make my skin tones really pop a little bit. So, you know, I added some contrast to this and some saturation. Now, these digital sensors are really sharp. You know, even the Pocket 4K compared to the 6K is obviously very sharp, but this one's also very sharp. And so what I always try to do is I put a softening filter on my lenses. You know, the Sigma 18-35 is a pretty sharp lens, so I put the Tiffin Black Pro Mist on that to kind of soften the image, and then I'm going to add film grain in post to give it a little bit more texture and kind of take the edge off of that sharp sensor. So if you want to purchase anything that I used making this video, of course those links will be in the description below, and it's super helpful if you click those links and buy something from them. I get a little kickback from that, and it's stuff like that that helps keep this channel going. Did you notice that I wasn't drinking a beer during this video? That's strange. It feels very strange. But I guess the video is over. Well, I hope this video was helpful. Until next time, guys, I'm gonna go have a beer because I didn't get to have one during this video. See ya.